There's a place forgotten by most and feared by all who remember. The town of Black Hollow sits on the edge of civilization, crumbling under the weight of time. Roads lead there, but no one ever goes, no one, except the desperate and those drawn by whispers they cannot explain. At the heart of Black Hollow lies an ancient cemetery place the townsfolk call the Bone Orchard. The ground is always cold there, even in the heat of summer, and when the wind sweeps through, it carries with it a lullaby, a song only the dead should hear. It is said that long ago, there was a child, a girl no older than 7, who lived just beyond the cemetery's reach. Her name was Elise. Elise had no family, or rather, she did, but they were buried deep beneath the earth, where the gravestones stood like broken teeth against the sky. She would visit them daily, sitting at their headstones, humming to herself. It was a soft, mournful tuning melody taught to her by her mother before she died. But then, one night, Elise disappeared. No one knew where she went. They searched the town, the fields, even the nearby woods. Days passed, then weeks, until hope faded. Only the lonely, empty grave stood witness to her loss. But then it began. At night, when the wind was still, people claimed to hear a soft, fragile voice, a lullaby drifting through the town, as if sung by the very bones in the ground, and those who dared to listen began to change. It started small, nightmares, faces in the windows that disappeared when the curtains were drawn, the faint scent of flowers, long dead flowers wafting through the air. But soon, the voices grew louder. Some said Elise had returned, but not as the child she once was. Something had come back, something broken. A mother, cradling her newborn, claimed she heard a knock at her door at midnight. She opened it, and standing there in the moonlight was a little girl, with hollow eyes and a cracked smile. In the wind, she could hear the lullaby, so faint, yet impossible to ignore. Others heard the song while passing the cemetery, the same melody Elise used to hum, only now it seemed to be calling, beckoning. The Bone Orchard's lullaby had become more than a song, it was a summons, an invitation to the grave. But it wasn't just the sound that haunted them. Those who listened too closely would find themselves unable to sleep, the tune echoing in their minds, knowing at their sanity. Some claimed they saw Elise standing at the edge of their beds in the dead of night, her small, frail hands outstretched as though offering a gift or a curse. It became clear that the lullaby wasn't meant for the living. It was a song of the dead, a tune passed down through bones and burial stones. One by one, people in Black Hollow began to disappear. They would wander toward the cemetery, drawn by the song, never to return. The Bone Orchard was hungry, and Elise, she was its voice. There are stories, whispered only in hushed tones, of those who have ventured to the cemetery in search of answers. One such tale speaks of a traveler, a man who had heard of a legend and came to uncover the truth. Armed with curiosity and a reckless belief that the dead held no power over the living, he ventured into the heart of the Bone Orchard at midnight. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. As he walked deeper into the graveyard, he heard its lullaby. At first, it was faint, almost distant, like the memory of a song long forgotten, but with every step, it grew louder, sharper, as though it were being sung just behind him. He turned, and there she was, Elise, her eyes hollow, her skin pale as the gravestones that surrounded her. She smiled, and in that smile was the promise of something far worse than death. No one knows what happened to the traveler, but those who dared to search for him found nothing but his journal. In it, the last entry was scrawled hastily, as if written in fear. The song, it's not for the dead, it's for us, the living, and once you hear it, you belong to it. Background, silence, then the faint sound of the lullaby playing softly. So now, if you find yourself near Black Hollow, if you hear the faintest sound of a child's lullaby drifting on the wind, don't listen. No matter how soft, no matter how sweet, the Bone Orchard's lullaby is never meant for you. There are places in this world where silence speaks louder than sound. where the echoes of the past cling to the air, waiting for someone anyone to listen. On the outskirts of a forgotten town lies the crumbling remains of a chapel, a place untouched by time, but not untouched by death. No one remembers who built it or why it was abandoned, but they all remember what it became known for: the silent choir. Once, the townspeople would gather there, drawn by the sound of voices sweet, mournful, and angelic. They called it the choir of angels. The voices would rise every evening, filling the air with a melody that soothed even the most tormented souls. But that was long ago, before the fire. Now, nothing remains of the choir but ash. And yet, on quiet nights, when the moon hangs low in the sky, people claim to hear the faintest echoes of their song, a song that no living voice should sing. It was said that the choir was cursed, that something unnatural happened in that chapel, something so unspeakable that even the dead could not rest. The final performance came one cold winter night. The choir sang their last hymn, their voices pure, unbroken, but as the last note faded, a terrible silence fell. No one moved, no one spoke. Then, without warning, the chapel burst into flames. The fire raged, consuming the building and the choir within. When the townspeople rushed to the scene, it was too late. They found nothing but the burned remnants of the chapel, and no bodies. Not a single trace of the choir remained, but something lingered in the ashes. Years passed, and the chapel was left to rot, its ruins blackened by the fire that claimed so many lives. The townsfolk refused to rebuild it. They said the land was cursed, that the voices of the choir had been silenced by something far darker than fire. Yet, despite the ruins, the music never truly stopped. Late at night, travelers passing by the old chapel would hear, if distant, haunting notes of the choir. Some said it was the wind, others they knew better. The ones who dared to approach claimed they saw figures shadowy, barely human, standing among the ruins. They didn't move, they didn't speak, they just stood there, mouths open, as if trying to sing. But no sound came. These were the silent choir. It wasn't long before the story spread beyond the town. People came from all over, drawn by the mystery, desperate to hear the fabled voices of the silent choir. Most left disappointed, but some never left at all. Those who listened too closely to the melody, those who stayed too long among the ruins, they were never seen again. All that remained were faint traces of ash, scattered across the chapel floor, as if they had joined the choir in death. The town warned outsiders to stay away, but the allure of the lost voices was too strong. There's one story in particular, one that still haunts the town to this day. A woman named Claire came to the chapel one summer night. She had lost her son, a boy who had loved to sing. They said she could still hear his voice in her dreams, calling to her. And so, when she heard the rumors of the silent choir, she believed it was a sign, a way to find him again. She ventured to the chapel alone, armed only with her grief and hope. The moon was high, casting long shadows over the ruins as she stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of old smoke and damp stone. But there, just beyond the altar, she heard it. A song, faint, distant, but unmistakable. It was her son's voice. Claire followed the sound deeper into the ruins, her heart racing, her mind filled with memories of her boy. The song grew louder, clearer, until it surrounded her, wrapping her in its haunting melody. And then she saw them. The silent choir stood before her ghostly figures, their faces blank, their mouths open in a soundless scream. But in the center of them, she saw him, her son, his eyes wide, his mouth moving in perfect harmony with the others. She called out to him, but he didn't respond. He just kept singing, his voice blending with the others until it was impossible to tell one from another. As Claire reached out to touch him, she felt the heat, the unbearable heat of the fire that had claimed them all. The air around her grew thick with ash, swirling in the darkness, choking her, pulling her into the flames. And then there was silence. When they found her the next morning, there was nothing left but ashes, scattered across the floor, mingling with the dust of the silent choir, her son's voice lost forever in the song of the dead. They say the silent choir still sings, waiting for the next soul to join their eternal melody. Those who hear the song are cursed to follow it, to become part of the choir. Their voice is forever lost in the ashes of the past. So, if you ever find yourself near the old chapel, if you hear the faintest notes of a forgotten song drifting through the night air, don't follow it. Don't listen. Because once you hear the silent choir, they'll never let you go. Some smiles are not meant to be seen. In a small, forgotten town tucked deep within a forest, there's a story passed down in hushed whispers. A story about a house, an ordinary house at first glance, but one that holds something far more sinister. Its shutters are closed, its door always locked, and no one dares approach it. But the townsfolk remember the face that once appeared in its windows, a face with a grin that stretched. They say it began many years ago, when a man named Jonathan Crane moved into the old house on Maple Street. He was quiet, kept to himself, and lived a solitary life. But Jonathan had a secret tone that no one in the town knew, at least not at first. At night, strange things began to happen. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. Lights flickered, even when there was no one inside to turn them on. And most disturbingly, those who passed by the house would catch glimpses of something, a figure, standing by the window. But what they saw was no ordinary man. The face was twisted, contorted into a grotesque grin, a smile so wide, it looked like it could split the skin. And as the days went on, the grin only seemed to stretch further. At first, people thought it was Jonathan himself, staring out from his window, smiling at passers-by in a harmless, if unnerving way. But soon it became clear that what they were seeing wasn't Jonathan. It was something else, something that wasn't human. Children spoke of hearing laughter, soft, distant, but wrong. It wasn't the kind of laugh that made you feel warm or happy. No, it was cold, lifeless, as if it belonged to something that didn't understand joy, but only the motion of a smile. And then came the tapping. At night, the townspeople reported hearing it a soft tap, 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 like fingers drumming against glass. It always came from the direction of Jonathan's house, and with every tap, that grin in the window seemed to stretch just a little bit more. One night, a young boy named Michael decided to see the face for himself. His friends dared him, and though he was scared, curiosity got the better of him. Michael crept through the streets, past the rows of sleeping houses, until he stood before the home of Jonathan Crane. The house was silent, still, but Michael swore he could hear breathing slow, heavy, coming from the shadows within. He gathered his courage and walked closer, his small feet crunching on the gravel path. And then he saw it. The grin. It was staring down at him from the second-floor window. The face was pale, gaunt, its eyes empty, as if the life had been drained from them. But the mouth, it was wide, far too wide. The grin stretched from one side of the face to the other, an unnatural arc that shouldn't have been possible. And as Michael watched in horror, the grin grew wider. The boy frowsy, too terrified to move. And then the face moved, slowly. Its neck twisted at an impossible angle, and it pressed its hands against the glass. The tapping began, again soft, deliberate, like fingers drumming against a coffin lid. Tap, tap, tap. The grin stretched wider still, the skin around the mouth pulling, cracking, as if it would tear at any moment. And that's when Michael ran. He didn't stop until he reached his home, gasping for breath, heart pounding. He tried to tell his parents, but no one believed him. No one except for the other children who had seen the same thing and heard the same tapping. The next morning, Jonathan Crane was gone. The house was empty, the doors locked, the windows shuttered, but the grin, it didn't disappear. It was still there, lurking behind the glass, as though waiting for someone to notice. Days turned into weeks, and the face in the window became a legend. People stopped walking past the house, avoiding it at all costs. No one wanted to be the next to see the grin, but there were always those who couldn't resist the pull of the strange and the unknown. Those who dared to look, and those who did never came back quite the same. Then one winter evening, a woman named Yvette knew to the town, and unaware of the story moved into the house next door. She was a painter, drawn to the quaint beauty of the town, looking for peace and quiet. The old house across the street intrigued her, but no one had told her why it stood abandoned. That night, as she worked late into the hours, Evelyn noticed something out of the corner of her eye, a figure in the window. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, but as she looked closer, she saw the face. The grin, it was wider now, impossibly wide, as if the skin would split at any moment, and the longer she stared, the more she felt the grin wasn't just watching her, it was for her. She tried to ignore it, to brush it off as a figment of her tired mind, but the tapping came, soft, rhythmic, insistent. Tap, tap, tap. It echoed through her house, though the windows were shut, though the doors were locked. It followed her wherever she went, that grin always waiting, always watching, as if daring her to come closer. And when she finally couldn't take it any longer, when she decided to face the house, to confront whatever lurked within, something happened that no one could explain. She vanished. The next morning, the door to Jonathan Crane's old house was found ajar, swinging slightly in the wind. The townsfolk searched, but Evelyn was nowhere to be found. All that was left were faint marks, as if something had been dragged across the floor, and in the window, that same terrible grin. But this time, there were two faces,